So, you were born in Gori, Georgia, and you weren't just poor, you were among the poorest in the city. Yeah, the man who would hold Russia and all of Europe in terror once lived like a church rat. But hang in there, kid. You'll be great one day. For you are Joseph Stalin, and it's your destiny to rise to the top of your motherland. But for now, you're just the son of a penniless shoemaker who couldn't stay in business. Life was very unfortunate for you. You had smallpox when you were really young, and this left your face permanently scarred and one hand disfigured and longer than the other. None of the pretty girls would want to come near you right now when you were so young. But in the future, when you become one of the most powerful figures in Russian history, that same face would put the fear of Stalin in your enemies. The girls will come then, but maybe with a little less fear for their lives. But hey, for now, there you were, poor and disfigured. Surely you must have at least loving parents to cushion the blows that life has already given you, right? Wrong. Your father, as I mentioned before, was a failed shoemaker. When his business closed, he dedicated himself fully to alcoholism and violence towards you and your mother. Your difficult life became even harder, and you couldn't even catch a break, even at school. And at school, you excelled academically despite your physical ailments. But you were mocked for your Georgian accent and pockmarked face. No wonder you developed that chip on your shoulder. The brutality you faced at home from your dad and at school from your peers shaped you in ways even you would never know until you taste power and begin to dish it out yourself. Your childhood wasn't just harsh, it was the perfect storm for creating a tyrant. Your mother was determined you'd rise above your circumstances. She scraped together every dime she had to send you to a seminary school, dreaming you'd become a priest. But that was ironic, considering you'd later orchestrate the destruction of thousands of churches and establish state atheism. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here, considering that it's still decades away. But how did you go from seminarian to taking people's freedom to practice religion? Well, let's talk about your time in seminary school. Your mother's expectations of you involved 5 years of theological education in a seminary notorious for its oppressive environment. At the time, the seminary was a Russian institution that was renowned for its strict surveillance and harsh discipline, not to mention that it was run by administrators determined to crush any Georgian national identity or revolutionary thought. The administrators inspected your dormitory, monitored your conversations, and punished any deviations from the rules. This environment was not suitable for a young Georgian boy with a vendetta against the whole world. Instead of suffocating your ideals, the school unintentionally fanned the flames that blazed inside you. You rebelled against their authority, smuggling forbidden books by Emile Zola, Victor Hugo, and most dangerously, Karl Marx. While your classmates memorized prayers, you organized secret reading groups and debated revolutionary ideas. Your grades plummeted as your attention turned from theology to politics. The final straw came when seminary officials caught you reading socialist literature, although some say you simply couldn't afford the fees, and you left in 1899 without graduating, already committed to the revolutionary path that would lead to decades of totalitarian rule and the deaths of millions. Your path to becoming one of the most notorious dictators the world has ever known was lined up with ups and downs. After all, power comes with a great price. With your mother's dream of priesthood thrown right out the window, you focused entirely on politics. You wandered aimlessly for a while, until you found a party to join. It was a group of other political revolutionaries and was exactly what you needed. Coincidentally, it was headed by Vladimir Lenin, who you later succeeded, but let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. That story is a long one. You dove headfirst into revolutionary activities, organizing workers' strikes and demonstrations. You fancied yourself quite the rebel and even adapted the name Koba after a Georgian folk hero, and began your purpose as Stalin, the revolutionary. Within decades, you were arrested and exiled to Serbia multiple times, yet somehow always managed to escape. In the eyes of some, you were indeed a hero, but you eventually revealed yourself to be the villain you really were. Beneath your Robin Hood persona was a man who was willing to sacrifice others for the so-called greater good. And this fact was revealed during a bank robbery you were involved in. Every cause needs a source of funds to further its agenda, and when things don't go as planned, you resort to the only option available: stealing. The event was a meticulously planned one that left your political party 341,000 rubles richer. But it came with a catch. About 40 people lost their lives that day, and you faced heavy backlash for it. Not that it mattered to you, because after your contributions to the scheme, Lenin began to take notice of you. And this marked your true rise to power. But your happiness didn't last long. Soon you lost the one thing that made you good in this world. Your first wife died sick, and all hell broke loose within you. You met Kato Svanidze and were taken with her. She was quiet, pious, and everything you weren't. Perhaps that's what drew you to her. She was the sister of one of your comrades, and in 1906, you married her in a church ceremony. How ironic that you, the seminary dropout turned atheist revolutionary, still opted for a religious wedding. With Kato, you almost seemed human. She was devoted to you despite your revolutionary activities, constantly taking you away from home. She gave you your first son, Yakov, and for a brief moment, there was something resembling normalcy in your chaotic life. But that didn't last long. When typhus claimed Kato's life in 1907, barely a year into your marriage, something in you hardened irreversibly. At her funeral, you reportedly said, "This creature softened my heart of stone. She died, and with her died my last warm feelings for humanity." How prophetic those words would prove to be. You tossed your son aside to be raised by relatives and threw yourself deeper into revolutionary activities. The death of Kato didn't just rob you of a wife, it robbed the world of whatever vestiges of compassion might have remained in you. The man who emerged from that loss was colder, harder, and more calculating. Perhaps without Kato's death, the Great Terror, the Gulag, the Holodomor might never have happened. But we'll never know, will we? Because the man who might have died alongside that young Georgian woman, leaving behind only the steely-eyed monster who would one day end the lives of millions. Issues in your personal life didn't end with the death of your first wife. When you finally became the leader of the Soviet Union, and the war with Germany raged on, your son Yakov got captured. You absolutely refused to cave to their demands, and in the end, Yakov died in a German prison camp. After all, what's a son compared to maintaining your power over Russia? Before the events of World War II, though, you still had to climb up the political ladder. Gaining Lenin's attention was one thing, but how did you keep it for long enough to become his successor? You became Lenin's successor not by charisma or by a strong position in the party. In fact, you were the most unlikely to rule after him. But in time, your opponents would realize that the meaning of your name, Stalin, Man of Steel, represented everything you were: unbreakable, tough, and can be easily made into a weapon. Your entire rise was a miracle of careful positioning. Your work as editor of the Soviet newsletter and your organization of bank robberies to fund your political party caught Lenin's attention. Your appointment as People's Commissar for Nationalities in Lenin's first government marked a turning point for your ambitions. You were a Georgian nobody who was transformed into an indispensable Soviet official. Lenin, whom you claimed to revere deeply, was initially impressed by your organizational abilities and loyalty. Soviet power structures made room for your talents as you became General Secretary in 1922, a seemingly administrative role others overlooked. While Trotsky, Zinoviev, and Kamenev were busy making grand speeches and theoretical arguments, you were quietly building your power base, placing loyalists in key positions. Even as Lenin grew suspicious of your ambitions and wrote in his will that you should be removed, you managed to suppress this document after his death in 1924. You outmaneuvered your rivals one by one, formed strategic alliances when convenient, and discarded allies when they were no longer useful. By 1928, you had eliminated all meaningful opposition and stood alone as the unquestioned ruler of the Soviet Union, ready to transform a revolutionary state into your personal dictatorship. It was a brutal battle of betrayals and strategy. But in the end, you came out victorious. But don't celebrate yet. The real battles are about to begin. Aside from some assassination attempts you and your people hid from the world, your most difficult conflict was hands down World War II. During this time, you faced another monster just like yourself, another madman who had plans for world domination. But not on your watch. The Man of Steel had his own plans, and that German with a bad mustache could never scare you away. The events of World War II were brutal to say the least, and with both parties suffering casualties. When Hitler made his move on Poland, you made a pact with him to split it between yourselves, which was a grave mistake on your part and completely unlike you, considering you lived your life in constant paranoia and mistrust. In the end, you let a man with a lesser mustache than you invade the Soviet Union and force you to align yourself with those capitalist Americans. Of course, you had to fight back. Your legacy depended on it. Everything you've built from your time as a common editor to finally holding all the power was at stake. And once more, just like you did when you orchestrated that bank robbery, you would sacrifice the lives of many, but this time on a much larger scale. Using others to get what you want has always been your forte anyway. Even your alliance with the Western powers was a marriage of convenience you leveraged masterfully. And when victory finally came, you made sure to seize half of Europe as your prize, installing puppet regimes and an iron curtain that would last for decades. And for your generals who actually won the war, many were arrested, executed, or sent to gulags once they served their purpose. You emerged from the war stronger than ever, with an expanded empire, nuclear ambitions, and a cult of personality that painted you as the sole architect of victory. 20 million Soviet civilians paid with their lives for your strategic blunders and ruthless calculations, but history remembers winners, doesn't it? And you, Comrade Stalin, made absolutely certain that you would be remembered as nothing less than the man of steel who saved the world from fascism. Hopefully, in the end, it was all worth it to you. The loss of tens of millions of Soviets, the loss of your own son. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention your estrangement from your daughter, who denounced you openly and went to the West to avoid your hard-handed rule. Hopefully, it'll be all worth it to you after you've imprisoned everyone close to you and forced them to confess to crimes they didn't even commit. And there's no one to genuinely care for you in your last days. No love, none of your children, not even your staff who left you in a pool of your own mess because they were too scared of their execution to come into your room and save your life in time when you suffered a hemorrhagic stroke. But hey, after ruling the Soviet Union for a quarter of a century, man, I doubt companionship means anything to you. Anyone who loved you might have lost their life in the end because of your paranoia anyway. After all, what would love even mean to the man of steel, huh?